So, are you saved? Will you go to heaven? I've been told many times that if I give my life to Jesus, I am assured salvation. Is that true? Well, as this gospel makes clear, ours is not a one and done religion. I give my life to Jesus or acknowledge he is Lord of my life, and I'm in forever. I've been told that I have to be baptized to go to heaven. I've been told that I can't have any mortal sins on my soul when I die if I want to go to heaven. So what do you think? What's your take on who goes to heaven? If there is a heaven. Catholic Christians my age are largely convinced that all those things are necessary. So they rush to baptism of their tiny little baby, or they sneak in a baptism in the bathtub of their daughter-in-law, hoping she won't see it happen. Or they rush to confession if they think they're going to die. Now, I'm not recommending you not do those things, because they are good. And I'm grateful for my baptism for 101 reasons. When it comes to our theology, when it comes to our doctrine, which is church teaching, we are not a church that is known to be liberal, right? That was Preach it, Sister Linda. But our teachings do evolve, like the doctrine, for example, of salvation, the doctrine of who goes to heaven. What many Catholics don't know is that the Catholic Church has the most liberal notion of salvation of most all the Christian churches, and even perhaps most of the other world religions. The first name of those who called Jesus Rabbi and experienced him alive after being dead was not Christian. It was a people of the way. I think you know that, but it's good to remember. We, before we were Christians, were a people of the way. Christianity was a way of life even before it was a set of beliefs. People of the way, we were called, and the way that marked us different from the rest was a way of love, but not a way of just any love or anything that passes for love in our culture. It's a way, as you heard in that second reading, it's a way of self-emptying, self-giving love. St. Paul described it that way. Our way is a way of love, and the way of love is self-emptying, being emptied of ourselves for others' sake, self-giving. Make of that in us a gift to others when they need it. You can see it all over in the life of Jesus, for example, with his first breath to his very last breath, when he says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." In the midst of being crucified and in the midst of being executed for not doing anything wrong, he said, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." That way of love, that way of life for each of us is what sets us right. It puts us together in our own self. It makes us whole. It puts us together in the human family. And it puts the world back together again to live that way. I have a great big book upstairs in my little office. It's a history of our Catholic understanding of who is saved and who is not, who goes to heaven and who doesn't. It's really fat. F-A-T and P-H-A-T. I find it so fascinating to see how the doctrine of salvation has evolved over the centuries in our church. As science has grown, as understanding of the universe has grown, as our understanding of the scriptures in the original languages they were written in and the circumstances of their day, as those original scriptures have evolved over the centuries for our church because of these new understandings of things, as history makes us aware now in ways we weren't before of the context of these teachings, where the church has landed, especially in 1965, at the end of this worldwide, and only the second worldwide council called the Second Vatican Council, it's that anybody who loves is capable of salvation. Anybody who loves is capable of heaven. I was just at a wedding this past weekend, and somebody began to talk to me about how much he struggles with the Catholic Church. Go figure. And how he has given up on his Catholic faith. How he could never sync his mind with some of the teachings of this church. For example, he said, I can't believe my Jewish son-in-law, whom I love, can't go to heaven. Or my daughter, who says she's an atheist now, can't go to heaven. I just can't believe that. And I want to say to him, but being the kind, gracious, quiet priest, it just came out. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This church hasn't taught that for almost 60 years now with clarity, and for an increasingly long time before that. So my response was, tell me when was the last time you took a class or listened to a lecture or read a book about what the church believes about anything? His response, 8th grade. And that's true for so many of us. So many have not picked up a book, gone to a lecture on what the church believes since grade school, or at most maybe high school. So many of us. I shared with him this new notion of salvation, not new actually, evolving notion of salvation that has clarity now for us, that the churches, that is the churches, and that's such a liberal doctrine compared to all these other faith traditions. And it blew him away. And then he got mad at me for never preaching about this on a Sunday. If I give a lecture about this, nobody will come. But he's right. I mean, there's really no time to do this on a Sunday, and I can't go into it in depth even today, but I'm so tired of people not knowing this that I think sometimes it just needs to be said. He was blown away by this new teaching. And my frustration as a priest, and a lot of my priest friends, we just get frustrated that people stop their Catholic education at the end of grade school and they leave the church for something the church doesn't even believe. The church continues to evolve in understanding because of science and history, new discoveries in history, and context and language. Another one that comes up a lot still, I can't believe it, is I leave the church because I'm an evolutionist. Hello? So is the last 5 popes. So are the last 5 popes. No, you don't have to get baptized to go to heaven. No, you don't have to give your life to Jesus in exactly those words to go to heaven. No, you don't have to ... And again, the way our doctrine puts it is, any man or woman of good will is capable of salvation. Did you hear that, church? any man or woman of good will is capable of salvation. In other words, it's more important that we be Jesus than it is even that we believe in Jesus. The church wants us to become Christ. Become Christ. And I could back what I just said to you with text after text after text in our scriptures, but we don't have time for that in a homily, like I said. But the church really, truly believes that it's more important that you and I become like Christ than even that we believe in Christ. It's more important that your thinking, my thinking, be aligned with the thinking and the mind of Christ. And our hearts aligned with his huge beating heart that's connected to the very center of this universe, than that we even profess our faith in him. Paul says it again, that second reading. What matters is that you have the attitude of Christ. If you want to be saved, you want to be whole, if you want to know joy, his attitude has got to become ours. Look again at this gospel you just heard. One son says yes in faith. One son says, yes, I believe. But then in the very next day of his life, he says no to living that way. He says yes with his mouth and no with his life, because he didn't live the way of love that was asked of him. He went back to selfishness and arrogance and control over others. Whereas the other brother crosses his arms and says a defiant, no, I don't believe. I do not believe in him. And then goes out to live his days giving love to all he meets, including his enemies. Which one did the Father bless in that story? The one who said no to God, but lived God's life as Jesus would have. That's why Jesus said the essentials at the end of that parable you just heard. The story of faith. Belief that atheists are getting to heaven before believers, he said. Before prostitutes and people who help foreign agents, tax collectors. Before all of them doing those despicable things, before all of them, it's their love that mattered in the end. They're getting to heaven before you, he said to the believers. Before you, because they love like Jesus loved. Even if they didn't know him, they loved like Jesus loved. Now, frankly, I don't know how they get to that way of life, that way of love, without him. I don't know that way. But it matters, it has to matter to us that they do. I really deeply appreciate my faith in Jesus more than I can ever put into words. Because he keeps in front of me, front and center for me, this way of life in his own life. I keep looking to him. I keep studying, trying to study him. I keep listening to his wisdom. And they knock me up the side of the head sometimes because I've gotten so far off that path on a given day. But other days they give me a huge hug and say, you're doing great, Gary. This is the way. And you'll know it by your joy. It begins to help me looking at him, believing in him, begins to help me be more self-emptying and self-giving, like Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth. And this, all of you, this helps me stay on track for the week to come. Being with you hip checks me back on the way if I happen to jump the curb with my greediness and my ego and my self-assuredness and my power trips and my crabbiness. Being with you hip checks that for me for the week ahead. This, then, is our faith. This then is our salvation, and this is our joy. To want nothing but for others to know the happiness of wanting nothing but the happiness of others. To want nothing but for others to know the happiness of wanting nothing but the happiness of others. See you in heaven, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Good job, Sister Linda.